Yes, Spurs fans, back again. Another panel show for you guys this week. We are back with the Irish guys, and we're going to be talking a bit more about Thomas Frank. But I think what's nice is that these guys, of course, have maybe their own opinions. We get to hear different sets of opinions from around the fan base. We had a great show yesterday with Sam and Billy T, and I really have been enjoying these ones with Jack and Colin here. I actually feel like they've given me different things to think about. And I was joking to Jack in the back end that I tried my very best to be blindly optimistic about, those 3 games of Newcastle, Slavia Prague, and then, of course, against Brentford. And then it felt like we went from having like an A on an exam to having an F, the next week against Nottingham Forest. It feels like we've returned back to factory settings, and we're now returning back to some of the conversations we were having about 2 weeks ago before we had that nice little cute spell, if you will, under Thomas Frank. But unfortunately to Colin, he missed that happy clapping week. So he's just going to have to continue from where he left off. I'll go to you on this one, Colin. I mean, nice to see you in at least a festive mood, but unfortunately, it doesn't feel that way as much with Spurs.
No, just making the effort, and like I said in the green room, very disappointed at the level of effort that you boys have made to enjoy the festive season. So I'm just going to make sure I carry the day, save the day for all you guys. So hello to my fellow panelists, hello to everybody tuning in. And if I might just be selfish for a moment, give a shout out to my father-in-law, who unfortunately suffered a heart attack before the weekend, and I wish them a speedy recovery. And yeah, very unfortunate to have missed the happy clapping week, as I was busy stuffing my face with free food and free alcohol, so it wasn't all bad for me. And yeah, on Frank, I'm sure it's probably all been covered, but yeah, strange position to be in. A bit like what you were saying, the A exams and things have fallen off. It's really, really difficult to articulate. I'm certainly going to stick with my original thought was we need to give him a season, but I am becoming more and more worried that our floor, or the lowest performances that we put in, are just so low. When there were so many, and we did talk about green shoots plenty of times on this podcast, particularly the 2-2 battling draws, I would have called it, against Newcastle. Great performance in against kind of a bit of a lackluster Brentford, but you can only play what's in front of you. Good result against Slavia Prague, although I did feel when I was watching that the performance was quite cavalier, that a bigger and better team would have punished us with the opportunities that we presented to Slavia Prague. Anyway, we survived, and we come out the door with a 3-0 win, and then it's almost Jekyll and Hyde. I do not know, and words fail me when I try to explain what happened against Nottingham Forest, and not a particularly good Nottingham Forest team. And you could tell from minute one it just wasn't going to happen. So on Frank, I think I'm still in the give him the season camp, but I'm really, really failing to see the identity, the plan, and a way forward. I'm kind of half hoping that he knows a lot more about football than I do, which I'm sure he does, but it'll all start to reveal itself. But at the moment, it's very, very difficult to be optimistic. It's very, very difficult to still have faith in what he's going to do. And I'm certainly starting to be concerned that he may have lost. I don't think he's lost the dressing room, but I do think he's lost elements of the dressing room. And it depends how loud those voices are as to whether the rest will follow. But it's it's a difficult one for sure. A very, very difficult time with the performances being so up and down.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just trying to cancel a call. I could barely hear you.
That's all right.
It was coming through my computer. But I know this is one little tidbit that you touched on there. And Dave and I kind of been joking about this, where I don't know if we've actually been accused that much of being maybe a bit pessimistic or negative, but I think Jay and I were joking. It feels like we've lowered our standards a lot for this season. Like we knew that it wasn't going to be, sort of a huge pickup from last season as much as we would have liked it. I think we were kind of saying, oh, it'd be nice if we could challenge it around sort of the top 8 and that sort of thing. Whereas only 2 or 3 years ago, we were asking for top 4 and pushing for a trophy. Like that's I know that was one little tidbit of, your
I don't disagree with that. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But I think that there is a couple of elements of play here. Just leaving Frank to one side for a minute, because I do have my issues with Frank and his styles of play. But a couple of things have happened to us as a club. One, we've had something we haven't had in such a long time, which was a trophy, which makes everybody feel very elevated and papers over a hell of a lot of cracks. But generally speaking, we have been trending down as we've been trending down performance-wise and squad-wise for probably a couple of years now, which is the manifestation of mismanagement, bad signings, changing managers all the time, never going for that top signing, always going for the bargain signing. And I do know we have signed some very, very good players, but equally we signed some very, very bad players. We have a squad which is a mismatch of 3 or 4 different managers now, probably, as well as your expectation climbs. Your expectation climbs because we have a shiny stadium, shiny training ground, and whatever else. But that's a bit like walking towards a Ferrari with the keys in your hands and thinking this is going to be amazing, and find out that somebody swapped out a beautiful V12 engine for a nice little 16 valve from a Nissan Micra. You're never going to get the same level of performance, and ultimately you're going to end up disappointed. So we, as a fan base, have high expectations anyway. They're elevated by a win. They're elevated by the club seemingly having pots and pots of money to do what they want with for infrastructure. But the squad has been lackluster, seriously lackluster for a couple of years, in my opinion, trending down. And we also just need to remember as well, for those of us who've worked in large organizations, which Tottenham Hotspur is, they're going through a change. So you've had a significant change where Levy has left after 20 whatever years, and a lot of management change in the background. That does take all time to bed in. But the reality is that our club has been happy to be mediocre for decades, just to be mediocre, just to stay in the Premier League, just to maybe qualify for Europe, etc., etc., etc. So it's not hard to see why we're in this position, and not hard to see when you've won something last season why everybody's so desperately disappointed. And it's not hard to see why Frank, he doesn't help himself, is taking most of the blame. But in my opinion, we've been a club in squad decline and performance decline for some time, and we've had strong managers that have probably been papering over. I mean, famously, Jose Mourinho wins at every club. He didn't win with our club. I know he hasn't won at whatever Turkish club he managed. Was it afterwards, or Roma, or someone? I know afterwards.
Yeah.
But as soon as Tottenham, thank you. As soon as Tottenham ruined him, he goes on to be as unsuccessful elsewhere. But I mean, we have successive manager after successive manager after successive manager telling us that the club mentality is wrong. That's probably rife throughout the club, and it will absolutely take time to correct. And we only have 2 opportunities a year with which to address the playing staff. And once they come in, they're usually from a lower league in terms of quality. Xavi is a perfect example of that. Absolutely ripping it up, and then comes to the Premier League and he needs time to adjust. So we never buy anything ready-made. And when we do, we make a bags of it. Dominic Solanke, the mystery ankle. I'm starting to ramble now, so I think I'll just stop there. But I'm sure you get my point.
I got plenty of your points. If anything, I actually chuckled to myself when you said it's sometimes painful when you seem to actually know and see the reasons behind why it's all gone wrong almost ahead of time. And I actually thought of Dave there for a second, which is probably why Dave has sleepless nights about Tottenham Hotspur. He probably just wishes it all came as a surprise for him, that he didn't have explanations for why it is all happening, and to be almost a bit more convenient for us. But let's get this show underway. Please, everybody, smash the like button, please. Get into the comments. Feel free as well to become a channel member. We are going to have a members preview, of course, tomorrow for the Liverpool game. Jack, who I'll be going to first, is going to the Liverpool game, so it'll be interesting to see how he's feeling ahead of this. And if you want to stop us at any point, feel free to throw in a comment. We'll bring them up on screen, address the ones that are really good questions. And if you want to have them shine and, stand above the rest, it also helps the channel. Feel free to do as a super chat as well. But Jack, Thomas Frank said before the kickoff against Forest, he expected Spurs to be front-footed, aggressive, and brave. Yet Spurs managed just 1 shot on target, and it's not the first time that has happened this season. Who's to blame? Frank's setup or the players failing to execute? Because I just want to add my own bias. I feel like plenty of times Frank's setup has been the issue, but that game I also felt like the players should not take any sort of excuses. I thought they couldn't even complete a 5-yard pass, it felt like.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think there's been plenty of games throughout the season where you could say, I don't even think individual players had terrible matches. I thought every single one of them. I thought Romero was okay. I thought other than that, I thought everyone was really poor, to be honest. So, but still, the setup I don't think helps. But at the same time, I think you saw like Xavi. I think he had made a lot of progress, but I thought that was probably his worst game, apart from maybe the Chelsea game, which I think there was a certain amount of mitigation for the fact he was just stuck out on the left and constantly kept getting isolated and losing the ball as a result. That was just like he was getting the ball in good positions, but just wayward passes, wayward touches. I think there was a Richarlison touch. I think probably everyone's seen it 3 or 4 times after the match where I think Xavi passed it into him and his first touch must have gone about 10 yards in front of him and he lost. I think that probably summed up our performance.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I don't think the setup helps. I think when you have such a negative setup, I think players do tend to become a lot more careless. I think last season there was a lot of times where we were very disjointed, but I don't think you could have said there was careless situations. I think it was more that just it was a bit too heavy metal, as Jurgen Klopp used to have his style called. I think that was part of the problem. But this season, it's like, it looks like players are nearly half asleep sometimes in the game. And I think a lot of that does come down to the style and manager and how he motivates them before the game. Every single game we hear about how we're going to start fast and go after the opposition, press high, and it just doesn't happen really. I think even at the weekend, I think we pressed, but it wasn't with any great intensity. I think it was more like pressing for the sake of pressing. There was never really moments where it looked like we were going to win the ball back high up the pitch, really. There might have been 1 or 2 where maybe we did win the ball or got close to win the ball, but never really anything in a brilliant position. And I thought for probably the 10th or 15th time this season, we were dominated in the middle of the park. I don't know, but I feel like that's every single game we win. It's in spite of being poor in the middle of the park. And I think regardless of personnel, that just seems to be the case every game, whether it's Paulinho, Bentancur, Gray, Bergvall, Sarr in there. We just seem to lose the midfield battle every single game. We have no control of games. And you look at, like, the Forest were in 17th place at the start of the weekend. Their 2 midfielders would both walk into our team, Sangare and Elliot Anderson. I know Anderson's someone who's linked with 90 million moves or whatever to other teams, but Sangare had walked straight into our team, and he's someone you wouldn't even discuss trying to sign. So I think that probably says it all, really. And obviously he scored a brilliant goal, got a lovely assist. He was the one that picked Archie Gray's pocket. But I think when most teams you come up against have a better midfield, then it's very, very hard to get anywhere with it, really. And I think that's something that that'd be one of my bigger concerns with Frank, is we don't really seem to be linked to any midfielders, despite the fact we're losing the midfield battle every single game. And we're looking at trying to sign left wingers, and I don't really understand that. I think if the games are won and lost in the middle of the park a lot of the time, we're losing them, and we're losing games as a result.
Yeah. No, I felt like, for me, Dave, that I've struggled with that game because I felt like there's so many other games where I think Thomas Frank set us up wrong when it came to the formation, maybe the personnel that he had switched and chopped and changed too much, or even just the intent and the philosophy and the style of play, I think, has set us up poorly. That game was one where I just struggled, to put it on one person's doorstep, because there were times when Xavi Simons, from minute 1 to minute 90, felt like he couldn't even make a right decision or complete a pass. Kudus was holding on to it too long. Or Charleston had that one touch that launched 30 yards in front of him when it was placed in front of his path. It was just one of those games that I did really struggle with, to be fair. But at the same time, maybe to my point about Frank, we've seen so many games where he has gotten it wrong, but I also didn't have a ton of sympathy either, just to say bad day at the office, type of thing.
Yeah, look. My opinion after that game was sort of, there's plenty of other days in games and gone by where you can go after Frank, but when the players are failing to execute basics, you can't put that on Thomas Frank. There are such times in games of football you go out there and you just can't get it together for one reason or another. Now that seems to happen a lot more at Tottenham Hotspur than other clubs, but For me, I think the players have to take the portion of the blame for the Forest game, because to be fair to Frank, he put out the lineup I think many fans were wanting to see, sort of the same formation many fans were wanting to see. And the players let them down at the end of the day. They didn't take their opportunity to sort of cement their places. Like, don't get me wrong, I do think Frank has over-rotated a lot this season. I do think it's sort of, and that's not just with players, it's also with tactics. And I think it has come back to cost us points in that. But them same players were good enough to play in that formation against Slavia Prague and against Brentford and go and deliver, decent performances. So why the change up against Nottingham Forest? And look, I'm not sitting here, saying that we have a great squad. We don't. It's clear and it's evident that we need to continue to improve on what we've got. But I also think it's fair to say I don't think Frank is getting the best out of them. I think a lot of them look clueless when they go out there. I don't think they know what the tactics is, what the idea is, and what they're being asked to do. And I think it's becoming a big problem. But the players shouldn't avoid, even if we say Frank, it does end up costing Frankie's job. We shouldn't be sitting there giving them players a free pass. And as soon as the new manager comes in, we should still be on their case inside the stadium and let them know that there is certain demands here for you to meet, and you have to go meet them. But chopping and changing managers all the time, we do sort of give them a free pass to that element, because then they play well for 10 games and all is forgiven. But I think it's gotten to the point, it's been so many over the next few years, I think many people will not give the players that free pass anymore.
I really agree with Spurs Related's comment here, saying I agree you can't blame Frank for basics done wrong by the players, but need something to cling on to and think that we are improving. At the moment, I don't see that. If anything, it's getting worse. I think I'm very much in that camp of things, to be honest, James. So class comment from yourself. Sugar Ray saying, respect the grind, lads. I want us to go at Liverpool from minute one and put in a committed performance. Well, let's maybe use Sugar Ray's very generous support here and move on to the next question here. And I'll throw this one maybe just actually at Jack just quickly, because I know he's going to be at the game. A lot of fans are blaming the players after that last defeat, Jack. But do you honestly think that they're still playing for Thomas Frank? Do you think they believe in his tactics? Have they maybe checked out mentally? You even said they looked half asleep. If they're half asleep, I wonder what the fans are doing. They must be fully asleep, watching.
Yeah, I think from their body language, I think they do look like they're. It's whether it's confusion or they're losing interest in. I think it's probably a mix of the two. Where I think the perfect example of that was Van de Ven getting handed that note against Slavia Prague, and he looked at it and looked baffled as to what was on it. I think that kind of sums up a lot of probably what players are feeling, that they're being asked to do things and they don't understand it. But at the same time, under previous managers, we've seen the sort of reports come out. The players don't like the training sessions, they don't like the tactics or whatever. But these such things haven't really come out yet, which maybe does indicate, because players will always put these things out publicly. They have agents that have sneaky ways of doing this. You can't put the blame on someone. So we haven't quite seen those reports yet. I think when you start to see them, you go, well, then they've clearly lost the dressing room. That was something that last season, as bad as it got, those things never really came out of the dressing room. And even you could see the players, the way they reacted to the manager going, that wasn't an issue. That was purely tactical issues last season, whereas this season I think there is a bit of interest being lost by the players, and I think that's probably something of concern. I think it was the second goal for Forest, Hudson-Odoi, where he put that cross in, that went straight in,
straight over Vicario.
Like Bentancur's effort for that, I was like, he doesn't even look like he's trying, which was quite concerning. I think from the third goal as well, then Paulinho was kind of standing there watching Vicario take the shot. I think stuff like that, when you're behind a manager fully, you throw your body in the way of everything to the point where you possibly injure yourself or whatever. And I don't think we're really seeing that. So I think that's obviously quite concerning, and just the lack of general intensity. But it is hard to pinpoint that. I think someone like Kudus, I think sometimes just looks like a bit disinterested. But at the same time, if I was him, where I'm that talented of a player, and I'm just getting the ball fired into my chest or chasing it down the line, I'd probably be very frustrated as well. I know they're obviously very well paid, and that's not an excuse, but at the same time, they are humans, and if they're frustrated on the pitch, they're not going to play as well if it's something that they're enjoying. So I think, there is definitely something to it, and hopefully it's something we can rectify for the Liverpool game. I think 5:30 kickoff, it's over Christmas. People will be well-oiled pre-game. I think hopefully the atmosphere will be decent, and if we come out, the first 15 minutes are good, I think the stadium will get behind them. But at the same time, if it's the reverse of that, I think it'll get very toxic, and I could see it being something like the Man United game under Nuno, or the AC Milan game under Conte, where everything just seems to come to a head. I think the Forest game was quite fortunate for him that was actually an away game, because if we put in that performance at home, I'd hate to see what the reaction would be. So I think it's one of those things, a couple of good performances, and he's back on the right road. I think what the saying is, results fix all problems. I think that's very true. Like, if we win every game over Christmas, or at least go unbeaten over Christmas with a few good performances, I think people get back behind him. I was ready to sort of get back behind him after the Brentford and Slavia Prague matches, and I think people will hopefully look to get back behind him if we get some good results, given the fact that it is his first season. But at the same time, it feels like a couple of bad performances will just have the polar opposite effect, and it's very much a roller coaster ride we're on at the moment.
Speaking just very quickly on I know it was a small point you made there, but on Kudus's like disinterest, and maybe some other players like Bentancur's maybe disinterest, Dave and I were kind of showing praise to someone like a Bruno Fernandes, because like when Man United have been utter crap, like you've seen him like pop up with an incredible goal, or like sort of just take it into his own hands and turn the game around on his own. And we don't seem to have that at the minute.
No, he's unbelievable. He's an unbelievable footballer. I can't believe he's wasted his career playing for an average Man United side. He should be at somewhere like Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Barcelona, or something like that, playing straight. He's just such a special player. But
his attitude, right? They accuse him of being like a pouty guy, but at the same time, how many times has he rescued them from the doldrums?
I don't understand that at all. I know he gets some criticism from their own fans. If they'd taken that 100 million from him in the summer, they would be so much worse off. They would have spent it on Carlos Baleba, who is getting hooked at half the time for Brighton. And they wouldn't have Bruno Fernandes. I just think he's the equivalent of what Harry Kane was to us, where he just would drag them through matches. I think his last 4 or 5 matches, I've watched 3 of them, and he's been the best player on the pitch by a country mile in every single one of them. And I just think he's one of those guys. He's constantly impacting the game, but then he's getting goals and assists as well. I think normally with those sort of, he's more playing in a deeper role now, but those sort of creative midfielders, they're either getting big goal or assist numbers, or they're impacting the game constantly. He's a rare breed of someone who's actually doing both. He's sort of like, he's scoring and assisting at the rate of someone like Foden, but then impacting the game, sort of like someone like nearly Pedri in the general play. And I just think that's such a rare blend. And I think to have a player at that level at an underperforming team is just, it's not something you can rely on. And I think even if we did have someone like that, it would only be paper and over cracks. As
it does, paper over cracks.
Yeah, it was Harry Kane was paper and over cracks for a very long time with us, and as was Son. I see something about there about Son. I need to give him praise as well. But Kane was that kind of talismanic figure that the amount of times we'd have bad performances and Harry Kane just pop up with a goal or two late on in the game and save us, and you'd nearly go, oh, that was actually, we won ugly there or whatever. It was actually just Harry Kane just being a complete freak of a player. You saw what happened last season when Kane wasn't there to save us. The amount of games we lost by 1 goal, that maybe if Kane was there, you draw that game or you win that game. It's just the difference that a player that quality makes. You're probably talking, it's the difference between coming 12th in the league and coming 6th in the league.
I mean, just to you, Colin, like, do you believe that these players believe in Thomas Frank, or are they starting to show signs that they're not? And do you expect them to be committed from minute 1 against Liverpool? And Sugar Ray's comment here.
I'm so frightened. Sorry, not to, Jack. I respect your opinion so much. I got to pull you up on one. Bruno Fernandes is a fantastic player, but for me, last season he blew. I know we shouldn't talk about other football clubs and players, but he blew so hot and cold for me. Like, I think he's playing so well this season because it's kind of all about him. Whereas I felt that I think he's far too pouty. Anyway, it's just a thing I have against him. I think I think he is a phenomenal talent.
I don't think he does it enough. Why you'd hate him.
Yeah, but we cheered him on if he was playing for us. But last season, I thought he could have done more, and he didn't. Whereas I think he's definitely doing it this season. So I suppose credit where credit is due. The truthful answer to that, Jack, is I haven't a clue what to expect. And as I said, the concern I have is that we don't seem to really, unless he's fixing things in the background that we just can't see. Because I mean, we look at a football club through a keyhole, and he's looking through the full door. So we only get to see a little tiny portion of what he's doing and the output that he's expecting. So it's a real difficult one to call, because the level of performance that we had earlier in the season was good. And I think it's starting to drop away, as is clearly evident. And then it started to pick up again, and then you get one bad result. So it's so hard to tell which one you're going to get. Now, if I was being cynical, which I'm very capable of being, they're going to turn up for Liverpool because it's Liverpool, right? They didn't turn up for Nottingham Forest because it was Nottingham Forest. They turned up in the Europa League against Slavia Prague because it was the Champions League. Sorry, in the Champions League because it was the Champions League, because it was Europe. So I think this is quite a moody team. And I'm not sure that Frank has the X factor to pull them through. Now, like I said, give it to the end of the season, but he's probably too much of a gentleman to go and, I don't mean rough them up physically, but rough them up emotionally and mentally to get a performance out of them, because he is quite pragmatic. He is quite calm. And whilst I found that a bit of a turn on at the beginning of the season, now when I want somebody to be metaphorically grabbed by the scruff of their neck and shaken into life, I'm not really sure he's the man that can do it. So I'll be interested to see what type of performance we turn out. But, I know that Jack was saying it's, results, obviously dictate the mood, but actually it's performances. I can take being beaten. There's no shame in being beaten by Liverpool, particularly as Liverpool are now starting to wake up. It's typical for us to come across every team as they start to wake up. But like it's, if you go out there and you give everything and it just doesn't work out and you get beaten 1-0, 2-0, that's absolutely fine. It's fine. It's like, it's so fine once the effort is there. But like, it just looked like they were not interested. And that is just so frightening. And it doesn't matter about the money. The money is an aside. We can't wrap our head around that kind of money because we don't get paid that kind of money, right? But at the end of the day, you have to assume they're professionals. I'm professional at what I do. I want to win at what I do. I'm assuming they want to win at what they do. So they must be crestfallen, heartbroken, whatever, when they're walking off the pitch and they haven't won and they want to go and fix it. So you'd be hoping that on the back of such an insipid performance against Nottingham Forest, that they're just going to turn and they're just going to have at it. If they have at it and we lose 1-0, 2-0, fine. If they turn in another performance like they did against Nottingham Forest, I'm going to have to reconsider my position on Thomas Frank. I really am, because it just feels like, when you listen to other podcasts where people are saying we shouldn't change the manager now because there's no one else out there. That's, get rid. If this man is just not going to work, it's just time to cut him loose, because there's just doesn't seem to be any way it's getting better. And don't forget, we're actually worse off for points and I think for goals scored than we were at this time last season. And we were all whinging about how terrible Ange was, and so was the club. And yet here we are. We're in a worse position under this, fantastic, pragmatic, tactically astute manager. We're just not getting the results, as well as really frighteningly, no one seems to be getting any better. Like who's improved? Like, who can you say, oh yeah, so-and-so has improved, he's improved, that's improved? No, absolutely not. Nobody can improve because he changes the team every 2.5 seconds anyway. So I don't know how anyone's supposed to really fit in and feel and make connections with other players on the pitch, as well as our top goal scorer just can't even get a look in this season. All of these things I'm sure you've covered in other episodes, but at least I get to get it off my chest.
No, look, this is what this is about, but to that point, Colin, and I know Jack said earlier on there hasn't been, many, any reports of basic unrest within the players. No, it hasn't been widespread. It hasn't been put out there relentlessly nearly every day like it felt like it was under Jose and Conte. It clearly felt like the players were ringing up journals and saying, look, this is the way we're feeling. It was almost relentless to try and get them out of the club. Now, there doesn't seem to be that from this dressing room here and now. But there were reports there after the North London Derby, and that's suggesting that the players were annoyed with Thomas Frank and his constant tinkering and stuff like that, that they would work on something and then he'd change it right before the game and, all this sort of stuff, sometimes change personnel and stuff. And I think, that often leading them to confuse to what they're being asked to do. And to be honest with you, I see that on the football pitch. We don't have any identity or any way of sort of trying to play forward. As bad as it was under Ange Postecoglou, at least you could see how we were trying to break down teams. You don't see that here at this Tottenham team. It looks like a lot of sort of guesswork. Some weeks we're going after teams out of possession, some weeks we're not. I understand you can't press relentlessly every week, but do a trigger press, something like that. I mean, we've got a tactical genius in charge with his coaching team and all the tactical pads. How they can't pinpoint one player of weakness on the ball and the opposition to go after that is beggars belief. And then when you look at the tactics and the identity, what are we on the football pitch? What are we trying to do? No one knows. It's just very, very confusing. And I think, to that report that came out after North London Derby, I see it on the football pitch.
Do you think there's any players that could be already mentally checked out, Dave? I mean, Jed Spence, very frustrated to be taken off for Ben Davis. Not the first time Jed Spence has shown frustration. You see Kudus, to maybe even Jack's point, like at times I have seen him sort of kind of roll his eyes or sort of shrug his shoulders, in frustration. Maybe some other players as well in the team. Do you think there are maybe players that are starting to show those seeds of doubt, really? It's all speculative, but maybe there is
it's
some
very
evidence
speculative.
to it.
Yeah, very speculative. But I think when you look at Jed Spence, him and Van de Ven already showed a bit of disrespect to Thomas Frank earlier on in the season. Now, with Jed Spence, I can't really defend him. He's fallen out with many managers, but Mickey Van de Ven just doesn't seem like that type of guy. So that already sort of, was a bit of a red flag. But then when Jed Spence got taken off there against Nottingham Forest, apparently there was a bit of dissent on the bench and stuff like that. So you're already starting to see the signs of frustration from certain elements. If you go into this report here a bit further and what they were saying, that basically they reckon that, if results don't pick up, that Frank will end up losing, a lot of the bulk of the dressing room. And, which shows to me, I think Van de Ven would be a pretty powerful figure within that dressing room. And I think a lot of people would follow someone like Mickey Van de Ven. So,
Yeah.
I would argue, I think there's definitely a couple. Look, being honest, if I'm a 4 player in this team, I'll check that months ago. Absolutely checked out months ago. If you're not going to work on attack and play, which you didn't do for so long, if you're not even going to give me the team any sort of directive of the weakness and where we go and explain stuff, I've checked out absolutely months ago. Because look, to the point, all we're using Kudus for is just stand there as a target and let's see how hard we can ping the ball off you. It's like them boxing machines. I'm almost waiting to see the numbers fucking go across to see how hard it was piled in at him, And you look at Colin Mawani. Was he brought in as a striker? Was he brought in as a left winger? He's been constantly chopped and changed and stuff like that. Xavi Simons in and out of the team and stuff like that. If I'm a 4 player, I've checked out months ago. Xavi Simons is also showing a bit of frustration and stuff like that. So I'd argue there's maybe signs of it, but I'm not going to sit here and say he's completely lost them because, again, it's speculative. But if I'm going off what I'm seeing, I think there are signs that a few players have checked out.
Yeah. I just want to say there are tons of people watching us over on X. If you want to follow us over to the YouTube, feel free to do so. Thanks to Billy for retweeting. Ian Ferguson, good to see you in the house. Big up to you, Ian. And then Tango Ben El-Sheed, maybe with the better questions than I've come up with, saying against Liverpool, who's actually going to get our one shot on target.
Richie. He loves playing Liverpool.
They should definitely include that in Paddy Power. Maybe a special section for Spurs of who is going to get the one shot on target. But I think I cut across someone. Someone wanted to come in.
Yeah, sorry, Jack. I just want to. Dave was just raising a good question or a good point about Mickey commanding respect in the dressing room. That if he goes, kind of people will follow. I thought I didn't listen to the full interview. I thought most of it was kind of just quite bored. It was just standard sort of stuff. He was just pointing out matters of fact. Didn't think he said anything controversial. But one thing to that point is he said when they went to Ange about the change in tactics for the Europa League, and Ange said to them, "Well, you and Romero are in charge of that," which I think shows they're the 2 guys in the dressing room that command respect from everyone. And I think you saw from Mickey the thing against Chelsea and maybe some other bits of frustration. And Romero, I thought his discipline the last 2 seasons was exceptional for a guy who was considered rash, and I thought he just completely cleaned that up. His discipline's been absolutely appalling this season. I think he has the most yellow cards in the league. I think he has to go through the rest of the season. I think he's on 3 yellow cards before he get a 2-match suspension. He's already served a 1-match suspension. And I think you see him kind of just stands up front when we're losing. Obviously, that worked out well against Newcastle, but he sort of got all the signs that he had under Conte where he was showing a lot of frustration. So I think he's someone who's getting really frustrated with how we're playing. Now, he's still obviously an exceptional player, but I think you can see by the way he's playing, he's not happy with how things are going, because that was something that never, the last 2 seasons, was something that happened, and it was something that happened under Conte, who I think it was well known the 2 of them didn't get along very well, and he got, I think 3 red cards in Conte's reign. So I think that says it all. And he got 0 then the entirety of the time since. But he's sort of starting to show maybe a bit of that, I wouldn't say immaturity, but just overly aggressive side to his game. And you see him even, I know obviously he's captain now, so it's a bit of a different role for him, but he's bickering with the referees over every single decision. And I just think that's a sign of someone who's really frustrated. And to be honest, I'm frustrated how he's used. I think the lack of use of his passing range is just completely ridiculous. You have one of the best ball playing centre backs in the world, and you're reducing them to passing it to his centre back partner or to his full back. And I just think I can understand why he's frustrated, but at the same time, he should be doing better. But I can see why he's frustrated, to be honest.
Also, I just want to add as well, when I see, just thinking, listening to Jack there, when I see little things on the pitch, I think, was it against Forest? And I think it also happened against Chelsea. You know, Thomas Frank is known for putting in direct throw-ins, you know, putting the ball into the box from free kicks. Against Chelsea, right near the end of the game, you're thinking, all right, put it in the box. They go short, end up effing it up. You know, same against Nottingham Forest. And there's been a couple of other games where you're thinking long throws into the box right at the end of the game. It's not happening. Players are, and I'm just starting to look at that and think and wonder, are players maybe starting to just go against what he's saying and starting to maybe go back to sort of what they know or what they think is the best? Because, you know, I have no doubt Thomas Frank against Chelsea instructed them to try and move that ball and try and work it down the wing into a better crossing position. You know, if you go based off what Thomas Frank has largely done here, it's been very direct into the box, same at Brentford. And when I see little things like that, I just wonder, are these players, is that also a sign of these players maybe not buying into it and starting to maybe just go and do what they want to do to a certain degree, which doesn't make it right, but I think it's a fair thing to look at.
Also, just on the players, I think it's bad news for him if he does lose a Mickey Van de Ven, if the seeds of doubt do just come from him or Romero, because those are the world-class players I think we can all agree with in the team. And I think usually that's kind of where players look up to. Like if they see them start to get frustrated, if they see them start to have seeds of doubt about what they're actually doing on the pitch, I think it will very quickly sort of riddle through the rest of the squad. Whereas, you know, you might have some guys that are on the periphery that might be frustrated with not playing, might be frustrated what they're being asked to do. But if you have that start to come in from your best players, the guys who do play week in, week out, and are sort of the future of the club, really, that's when I think trouble is really brewing, to be honest. But yeah, Jack.
Yeah, I think. Oh, geez, I can't remember what I was going to say now. I'll leave any. Oh, sorry, about the throw-ins. Sorry, about the throw-ins. Where Dave was saying about the throw-ins. The long throw-ins. I couldn't tell you the last time we actually created a chance from them. Oh. I think it was the Super Cup. I genuinely can't think of a single chance we've created since.
Not a living memory, Jack.
Well, we scored from one of the Super Cups, so that's the only reason I remember it. But I couldn't tell you a single chance we've created from one since. Like, most of the time just gets headed away with no danger. It's one of those things, if it's not working, just stop doing it. You don't have to do it just because Danso can throw the ball far. And when Bergvall starts taking them, I don't get it. You can't even throw it far. I throw further myself, I'd say. Like, I just don't see the point in that. So I just think that's one of those things that's just wound me up beyond belief, that you're probably into the last 2 minutes of a game and you're wasting 40 seconds setting up a throw-in that gets headed away straight away. And I'm just like, what was the point of that? Just take it quickly and cross the ball.
Yeah. Maybe just only do it if Danzo's in the team. And then if not, you know, let's just go back to some normal stuff. Colin, Spurs have Liverpool at home, of course, Palace away, Brentford away, and Sunderland at home in our next games. The Sunderland game at home, the fourth game in that list there, is on January 4th. The board have come out and said that they're backing Thomas Frank. But if Spurs fail, let's say, to pick up more than 3 points out of a possible 12 there, should the board reconsider if he's the right man? I don't know, Dave. I kept it dramatic. Should the board be reconsidering if he's the right man for the job? Because the justification to sack Ange Postecoglou was that we were supposed to be challenging at the top of the table in all competitions. And like, to my question, even though Dave thinks I'm crazy by saying only 3, if we do only get only 3 out of a possible 12, that would show we are dangerously headed the opposite direction of what they expected, you know, from the beginning of the season.
I'm going to break the answer into 2,
please,
if I may be so bold. My view is we should get rid or keep and back him by the end of this month, by the end of December, right? And I'm not going to put that solely down to results. I'm going to put it down to results and performances.
Okay.
So the only way in my mind that I'd like for him, I still I do want to see the season through, because to be fair to Thomas Frank, he's new to the job. He's new to a big club. They are going through change in the background. There's probably a lot of stuff we don't even get to see he's dealing with, etc., etc., etc. But if we go out and we get smashed by Liverpool, and then we go up to Crystal Palace and get smashed by Crystal Palace, I think he's on a sinking ship. But the only thing that could save him in a situation where we get smashed in both matches is that there's a resilient, a resilient team applied. All those words, effort. I couldn't see how he survives if we go out and put in 2 more against Liverpool and Crystal Palace, 2 more Nottingham Forest, Arsenal, Chelsea. And there's another one I can't think of. Bournemouth, maybe, style performances. And I think at that stage, I think even my patience would be worn completely out. So I'd be happy enough if he, and the same thing, if we happen to win them, but the performances are terrible, if we get lucky ones, I still would kind of think he should go, because it feels to me like the mentality, the direction of the team is just kind of lost. I need to see something. I know we had a good early part to December, but that Nottingham Forest performance and result just completely and utterly changes how you feel. And all the stuff that we were doing at the beginning of the season, like the long throws and the set pieces that were working, are just not working anymore. Nothing is kind of working. We were defensively solid. We're not defensively solid. So it's all, in my humble opinion, just gone a bit ragged, and we don't seem, in my opinion, capable of stringing together whatever's wrong with our mentality or squad or quality or depth or over rotation or over filling the players with too much tactic. We just don't seem to be able to be capable of pulling together a string of consistent performances, which I'd hoped was coming on the back of Newcastle, on the back of Brentford, on the back of Slavia Prague. So I expect us to go out and probably get beaten by Liverpool, which I hate saying. And if that happens, again, the colour of how I'll feel will be the colour of the performance, whether it was whether they were applied or not. And I think Crystal Palace will probably just have too much for us.
Yeah.
They're playing so well, and we're not. And then, so come the close of that, that's a 4:30 kickoff on Sunday, the 28th of December. I think that will colour everything. I mean, I know you were talking about the January fixtures where you got Brentford and Sunderland and Bournemouth and then into Villa. And, to me, the time to pee or get off the pot, as we colourfully say here in Ireland from time to time, is the end of December, because you need the transfer window for whatever new manager comes in, if one is to come in. To buy in some players that will suit yet another system and yet another style of play, etc., etc., etc. So I want him fully backed or fully gone after the next 2 matches. That's pretty much where I am, because I don't see what's the point in dragging it out where we decide come February he's not for us and we've missed the opportunity to improve the squad.
No, I was just going to give him the Brentford away game as well, just to see if that could be something to cling on to. But might be right. Just make December the cutoff. So are these games then, Jack, do or die for Thomas Frank? Considering, he's got 2 more games until the end of December, and then after that it's Brentford away and Sunderland, and by that point it'd be January 4th.
Yeah, I think this, provided he gets through the weekend, I think Sunderland's the one where it can get really ugly. I keep going back to, I think the home games are really dangerous for him, because when the home fans turn on you, the club can't ignore it. The away fans, they might boo you at the end of games. You saw players going into the stands after games arguing with fans and stuff. That's not as telling as 60,000 people making their voice heard, booing your substitutions, chanting you don't know what you're doing, chanting sacked in the morning. Like, if home fans are chanting sacked in the morning as Ange got a Forest, you're as good as gone, because the club can't ignore that, because people have out with their feet. There's people. There's one of the lads I know who, I think he missed 3 games in the entirety of last season, home and away, He every single away game up until the end of the season, he went to Villa away just before Bilbao. He texted me the other day going, "Do you want my Liverpool ticket under face value? You can have any tickets you want until that fella's gone." And that's someone who followed the team through thick and thin last season when we were losing nearly every single game, going, "This is where I'm stopping." And I think that's very telling that that's how bad it is. And I think a lot of these guys, they probably all feel the same. If I was going every single game twice a week, spending all my spare time, all my spare money doing it, I'd feel the same. And ultimately, these are the guys that are most important. They're the life of the club. These guys that devote everything they have to the club. And I think when they speak in groups, people do listen, and the narrative, I think, will get very bad in them. So I think, yeah, that's just kind of an anecdote as to how bad I think it's gotten with them. I think Brentford obviously was at home, and Red Star Belgrade was at home, but home loss. We haven't had a home loss in a while. I think it was Fulham. Was that the last home loss?
No.
Yeah, and like you saw the booing that was happening to Vicario, the booing at half time, the booing at full time. I think another home loss against Liverpool, and then a home loss to Sunderland, who will have half their team away on AFCON, I think would just be detrimental to him, to be honest. But I think kind of going back to the point Colin made about back him or sack him, basically, I wouldn't trust him to identify players to sign for January. I think he's just, all he ever talks about in his post-match interviews after we lose is Gills, how we didn't win enough Gills. I think he's just going to sign guys he thinks can win Gills rather than guys that are really good footballers. And I think that's something I'd be a bit concerned about. I don't think we have enough good footballers in our team, and I think that's a basic requirement. I think the other, apart from maybe United, all the other big six teams just are on a different planet to us in football ability. I think athletically we actually have quite a good team, and ultimately that's what wins you Gills is attitude and athleticism. And we don't have good enough footballers. Can't string, as we said, couldn't string 4 or 5 passes together at the weekend. That was nothing to do with Gills.
That was shocking.
Players not being able to string passes together, like that's not making a tackle or taking on a man or whatever. That's just like how good you are as a footballer. And I think that's ultimately what we need to address in January. And I think that comes down to Lange and Paratici. I think I don't trust either of them to make signings that'll improve us. I don't trust them to appoint a new manager. And I think ultimately they're a big part of the problem as well that isn't spoken about enough. I think the 2 summers where Paratici has had to hire a manager, they were a complete mess. We ended up with Nuno after, how long do we have? 4 or 5 months with no manager? And even the Ange one was fairly ugly how we ended up with Ange. I think we went through about 3 or 4 candidates before him and got rejected. I think Slot was kind of the notable one that we got rejected by.
Mm-hmm.
I think those when Frank eventually gets moved on, because I think it's more of a when, not if. I think one or both of those guys have to join him, and I think you get someone in from the top that has a philosophy. I think Paratici was talking there a few weeks ago. He did an interview saying, "I don't have a philosophy. I believe in whatever the coach is doing." I just think that's such a ridiculous way to think as a sporting director. The sporting director should hire a manager that has the club philosophy, which should go through the sporting director. I just think that's the way to do it. That's the way Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, that's how they developed their sort of winning formula over the last decade or so. And I think that's ultimately what we have to do. We can't just keep switching between going from a Conte to an Ange to a Frank. We have to just, even if we don't get the right manager in, just get someone else similar to him, because you've already bought the players for him. Just get someone similar but better. I don't think there's a right way to play football. Just pick away. I prefer something progressive. I think most fans would, and just stick with it. And if one manager doesn't work, sign someone maybe slightly different, not the exact same, but just that you think would do a better job. And eventually you'll have a team bought over 4 or 5 seasons, as teams like Brighton, Brentford have done so well, obviously on a much smaller scale. But they just get guys in to just continue on from the last manager. And I think that ultimately is the way forward for us. And I think regardless if we sack Frank or don't sack Frank, I think ultimately from above him has to change as well.
Just quickly as well, like, as much as I think Colin's absolutely right about performances, I think will really dictate, how long he stays in, at least to your opinion too. I think it was Billy who brought it up to Dave and I, and thanks again, Billy, for retweeting the stream. But Billy did say that I think the Dortmund game is not even sold out yet. Like some of these bigger
Yeah,
games that
someone
would
gets
already be sold out by now are not.
Yeah.
And that's also, I think, if anything, if the board do like the guy, they also have to consider that. Like clearly the
Yeah.
fans are making their voices heard, or maybe their wallets heard by them not buying the tickets to see the games. And that's probably the utmost importance, is that there has to be interest in going to these games, and if there isn't, no matter how much they believe in the guy, I don't think they would tolerate that for that much longer, to be
Yeah, well,
honest.
the product is suffering. That's at the end of the day. Sorry to talk about it in black and white terms, but it's entertainment. We're passionate about it because we're Tottenham Hotspur supporters, but it is a form of entertainment. It's no different to a movie. It's no different to WWE, or going to the opera or going to a play. The quality of the product is suffering, and people are starting to vote with their feet. And that will be a major, major, major concern for these guys.
Yeah.
Dave, let's take Jerome's here saying, who among you think that we will have another 0.01 XG against Liverpool? I think Tango Bin Al-Sheed's comment might have been my favorite from the day. Who will get the first shot on target, Jerome? Jerome, do send us your thoughts on who will get that first shot on target. Maybe it might be a Kevin Danzo, or it could even be a Pedro Porro misaimed cross that ends up, maybe counting as it could be a long throw that they'll count, luckily, in our end as a shot on target. I am interested about how this game will play out. Will we just be sitting back, waiting for the inevitable? I have no issue sometimes with sitting back, as long as you have that clear plan of what you do when you do win the ball, that you know how to hurt teams on the counter. I think Liverpool have been wide open on the counterattack this season, so it's not like that's a terrible way to go about it. But when we have sat up, pragmatically, we haven't really had any clear idea of what we do when we actually win possession back. And that's another big issue under Frank. Like, we can't string 5 passes together, even if we are, just doing a simple counterattack.
100%. What I will say to Jerome is I'm hoping that Kanate plays. That would probably boost that XG up just maybe by an extra 1 or 2, Jerome.
Yeah, maybe the shot on target will be from own goals, for this game for us. That could be our shot on target for it. But Dave, just your thoughts. I mean, you were scoffing at the idea that 3 points out of a possible 12 would keep him in the job. Does he have to get more than that?
It's not that I was scoffing at it, Jack. It's just like, has our expectations been so lowered,
seriously,
by Thomas Frank, that people are expecting 3 points from this run of games? That's where I sort of scoff at. It's like, where's the ambition here? And like, if 3 points is the minimum if what people are expecting from Frank here, then what are we doing here as a football club? And that's not directed at you, of course.
No.
But it's just sort of like where we are now. Don't get me wrong. You'd probably take 3 points from that run of fixtures. I don't know where we are right now, to be honest with you. But I mean, look, I'm sort of along the line with what Jack said, to be fair, and I think it's more or less spot on. Honestly, I think the Slavia Prague and Brentford has sort of prolonged this a little bit long. The 2 wins there, it sort of gave them that little bit of stay of execution. But I think it's a matter of when it's going to happen. I just don't see enough between coach and players. And by the way, this is a guy that was allowed to bring in his team, and the whole idea was so that he can execute it on the training pitch and get it across a lot quicker than maybe what other managers have done. And we probably look the worst, So sort of me, I just see more than enough to know that I don't think this is going to work going forward. It's just not.
Speaking of the product that you mentioned, Colin, this is an interesting one. Have Spurs made perhaps another mistake that they've done in the past of going sort of back and forth between play styles? And even Jack sort of mentioned this, right, about the director of football needing to have a clear vision of how they want the team to play. Because we went from Pochettino to Mourinho, which was a dramatic transition in style of play. We went from Ange Postecoglou to Thomas Frank, which we now have seen with the benefit of hindsight is a huge dramatic, style of play change. Should we have brought in someone, even if Ange's play style necessarily didn't work, but should we have brought in someone that at least had something similar, someone that still did have that attacking endeavor? Have we kind of made the same mistake we might have done from Pochettino to Mourinho?
I think it's clear now that we have. At the time, it was a concern because, you can see how the Nottingham Forest appointment of Ange was the strangest one. I'm sure all of us could see as football fans that just was never going to work.
That's a good example.
It's a fantastic example of a clash of play styles with an existing squad and an inbound manager. And I felt very, very sorry for Ange because I mean, I couldn't see. I know he's headstrong, and I think probably think I can make it work. And wow, to have that kind of level of self-belief, but you got to take a step back and look at yourself and look at the situation. And I don't know why he put himself into that situation in the first place. It was always going to end in tears. In relation to Frank coming into Spurs after Ange, I did feel, well, first of all, I wasn't overly impressed with Frank. I didn't think he was a big enough name. But when you do your research and you see, well, he's done a great job at the two previous clubs he was at, everybody who speaks about him being a very clever manager. Even Sean Dyche said that, did he not? After the
Well, they have a
Nottingham
love affair
Forest game?
between each other. Sean Dyche.
Yeah,
and
he
Thomas
did
Frank.
say something, I think, very positive about he's a very clever guy or something like that. And those guys don't say that unless they have to. So he obviously feels that way. But what I did feel, obviously there's a bit of a clash of play styles between what Ange was doing with Spurs and what Thomas Frank was doing with Brentford. But I thought when he was coming in, I said that's okay because he's clever enough to be able, and astute enough and tactically aware enough to be able to make it work. And disappointingly, it just doesn't seem like it will. And I've still got hope in my heart that it'll all click. And this will be a deep and dark and distant conversation that we will have had at the end of 2025. And we're all delighted in February of 2026. But for the moment, it just doesn't seem to be gelling at all. So therefore, it retrospectively looks like a mistake. Question. Yeah, it is. It feels like a mistake at the moment. Definitely.
I think your point of, even though it's a different club, it's maybe good to bring up an example of it at a different club, that going from one play style to completely other one, as Paolo has said in the chat, like a complete 180, really is a dangerous move to make, because the players, have to all of a sudden adopt a completely different play style. The club itself, is then trying to get behind, a completely different play style, maybe different players that they have to bring in. And it's a very risky move. And it showed that it didn't work for Forest, and it showed that it hasn't worked for Spurs, in two examples now. So to bring it up from Nuno to Ange, I actually think is quite clever. I think that's because we always look at it from a Spurs perspective, but just this season, we've seen it not work for another club.
But like on that, when you look at it, like if you're going to make that change, you almost have to be willing to bring in 6, 7, 8 players that summer. You almost have to be willing, because it's, you're going from a squad that is used to receiving one sort of set of instructions, playing a certain way. And a lot of them players, if you're going from attack and defensive, they're just not, I'm telling you now from experience, attacking players will struggle to buy into defensive sort of systems and pragmatism and stuff like that. And when you look at games this year, when we've actually won games of football, which have been very few and far in between, we've gone out after them out of possession, and in possession, we've shown a bit of bravery and stuff, committing bodies forward and that. When we've tried the pragmatic approach under Thomas Frank, sort of on the ropes, trying to spar and stuff, we're just getting absolutely railroaded. But I'll be brutally honest, my whole lifetime as a Spurs fan, if Spurs were 1-0 up going into the last 10 minutes and we sit back, we're not holding out. It's just been that way my whole life. We're not that team. We've never been that club. Once they sacked Ange Postecoglou, and this is something I tried to convey in the summer amongst all the fanfare around Tommy Boy. But, that we should have continued on with someone that's a bit more on the front foot. The biggest change that Frank was always going to have to make was change his style of football. And it's very hard for a manager like that to change his style of football when it's worked from at a lower level. He's clearly struggling with that at Tottenham Hotspur. And for me, like when you look at it, our club motto is to dare is to do. We should never be bringing in pragmatic managers, because that's not the way they see it. It's absolutely madness. It's a mismatch. To Jack's point, I was sort of saying this myself yesterday. Tottenham right now has no identity. Our identity is whatever way the manager views football. That's it. That's our identity. What we should be, and where the decision should be made is the ownership level. What product do you want on the football pitch? And if you go by what Spurs fans usually want, because my whole lifetime, don't get me wrong, I think we've had just as bad squads at this in years gone by. Now, you have to go back quite a long way, but we've had just as bad squads and stuff like that. And, but we've always given teams a go. That's what we've always been known for. And for me, that's what the club should be hanging on to. And then that way, then you make your signings a lot easier, because then with all your little data-led model, you just type in all the calculations you need. That'll flag up players. That way, you're not losing money so often, like we are. We bring in a player for 50 million who works like Johnson. Worked sort of under Ange, never going to work under Thomas Frank. You know what I mean? That's money down the Swanee. How many other players are of the same ilk like that and stuff? And you're just
And 18
wasting money
goals.
by chopping and changing. If you continue to play the same way, then the manager comes in. You've already got the players there for it, and then also you're not burning through managers the way we are. That's the big problem, And Jack said it himself that with Paratici, well, our identity is what the manager is. Bollocks! You're the club. You set the identity, and you bring in people according to what you want.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, Jerome here, Jack saying, I'm just joking, but I do hope we can counter them, and please just be brave. That's all I ask for, win, draw, or lose. How do you kind of want us to go at Liverpool? I wouldn't mind sitting back, like I said, as long as we actually have a clear vision of what we're going to do when we do have the ball. We even saw Sean Dyche use that against Liverpool. He absolutely destroyed them, but it was more of a counter-attacking type of style, which I'm pretty sure Thomas Frank should be capable of against a team like Liverpool.
Yeah, I find that I can't believe how poor we are on the counter. Like, we sit back, our shape is generally actually quite good out of possession. I think the pressing, we're not a great pressing team. I don't really like our presses. We're going to do it 100%. If you're going to do it 100%. We're going to do it 80%. But when we sit in the edge of our box, I think our shape is generally quite good. I think sometimes we just sit back a little bit too much, maybe push out maybe 5-10 yards, especially when teams are going to shoot from the edge of the box. But I think generally the shape has been good, but it's when we win the ball back, it's like we have no idea what to do with it. I think even in the bad times under Mourinho and Conte, when we won the ball back, they knew exactly what they were going to do to try and counterattack the opposition. We look like the opposition would be wide open, and we'd just be Van de Ven get the ball, and he'd look up and go, "I've no one to pass to," and just launch a hopeful ball forward. I think that's actually a bigger concern. I think if he was sitting back and we look good on the counter, I'd be inclined to give him a bit more time. But it's the fact that we're actually not good at any style of football is the concern, which I don't think really answers the question. But I think I don't have any faith in us to play on the counter and play well. I'd rather see us. We've had a week's rest. I think we have another week's rest before we play
Palace.
Yeah.
Just go press them high. We have a week's break between either side of the game.
Okay.
We have most of our squad fully fit, apart from the lads that we knew we weren't going to have. So we'll be able to make subs as well. So just press them high, not recklessly, but sort of the way we did against PSG and City, where we picked our moments. And against City, sure, you saw, was it Paulinho's goal? Won the ball high up the pitch. But we didn't always press high. We picked our moments to do it. And I think that was actually a very good game plan. And I think something like that with the week's rest, it's very hard to do when you're playing 2 games a week, unless you're going to rotate heavily, which we've seen the problems that have arisen from it. But yeah, I think we need to be brave, but also pick our moments and be cautious at times, because the last thing we need is to go 2-0 down inside half an hour. And I think every single person inside the stadium is probably going to get on the manager and players' backs.
Well, you'll be in there. How will you be?
Sorry?
You'll be in the stadium. How will you be?
If it's not going well, I'll be booing as substitutions anyway. I'll be making my feelings known anyway. I generally I don't like to do that sort of thing, but I'm so frustrated with it. And at the end of the day, you spend so much money on the games, you spend so much time. You probably Sunday I'll come back and sure you're knackered from getting up early the day before, late night, then that night. Like, it's probably 2-3 days worth of energy you're using up to go to one game, plus 300, 400, 500 quid. Like, flights were nearly 100 quid. Ticket was £94, so that's about 130 quid.
Jesus.
Hotels 60. Drinks, sure, we'll be drinking from probably 11 o'clock in the morning.
You don't have to drink, Jack.
Not when you're watching Spurs.
I couldn't watch Thomas Frank's football.
I think when watching Spurs.
I could be teetotal my whole life, and I'd be having about 10 points this weekend. But when you're spending that sort of money, I think it's very hard not to. And I remember feeling the exact same way going into the North London derby and the AC Milan matches under Conte. And when the full-time whistle went in both of those games, my head was just completely gone. I was like, I want them gone. So I think when you have the raw emotion of the match, I think really you do make your feelings known. Maybe there's moments where you come out of the match and go, I went to be overboard there, but it's hard to control your emotion at the time.
It's mob mentality. It's very hard.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. And also, you feel like you saw under Nuno what happened when the whole stadium got on the manager's back. And listen, Nuno was a nice fella. I felt bad for him. He didn't deserve for that to happen. But at the same time, the 60,000 people there that paid £90 for a ticket, and they got the manager sacked and got the man they should have hired in the first place in. So I think fans have 90 minutes of power every home game, and they should use it for the right reasons. But at the same time, I think you can go overboard with that. So I think, yeah, I'll try and get the balance right.
It'd be interesting.
It'd be interesting to see if it's sold out this weekend, because that's a fixture that is like has notoriously been very hard to get tickets for down the years. You know, if that's not a sellout this weekend, I think the board will start to be very, very concerned and start to be worried. Like, this is one of the big draws of the season. This is one of the big games that always sells. You know, if that stadium, if there's pockets of stands where it's just blue seats, which we've seen in recent weeks, writing's on the wall for Frank. Away fans are booing, home fans are booing. You're booing at halftime, full time. It's getting out of hand.
Yeah, it'd be Liverpool fans in the home end. I reckon there'll be a lot of them, because a lot of people sell their tickets and they couldn't care less who they sell them to. So I could see a lot of Liverpool fans being in the home end. I think other games maybe it'd be a bit different, but I think the likes of Liverpool and United, you get so many fans all around the world. There's probably loads of them that live in London and they go, oh, well, there's a ticket there available for less than face value. So I think, you probably will sell it out just because of the fact that it's Liverpool, but it might not be Tottenham fans there.
Of course, I can't talk, but I have heard that joke plenty of times about Man United and Liverpool, that they're more.
I wasn't even meaning it as a joke, in fairness. It is something that gets leveled at them, but they're such big clubs. As every second person you talk to in Dublin either supports Liverpool or Man United, and anyone that doesn't, they probably don't even watch football at all. Like
Man City.
Well, is that the kids now, is it?
Yeah.
I'm worried if there are empty seats, to Dave's point, that it could be filled out, very easily then by those Liverpool fans or whatever in London. And Jerome, I think, will be happy by Jack's answer there, that, he wants us to actually go after them, not sit back, like maybe I was suggesting. Just from you, Colin, are you kind of in Jack's boat? Do you like to see them press them since they have had a lot of days rest?
Oh, 100%. I think if we go out and set up like Arsenal and don't have a plan B and wait, we're not good enough to keep them out for 94, 96, 97 minutes. We're just simply not good enough. And the thing that was a crushing disappointment against Arsenal was once we conceded, it was so obvious we had no plan B. We didn't know what to do once we'd conceded. We just kept doing what we did before. And I don't know, complete disaster. The only thing to do, particularly when you're at home, is to go for the throat. There should be no other way. I don't think Frank is capable of coaching within the space of the last game to this game, sit back and absorb the pressure and hit them on the counter attack tactic. I just don't think it can. If it wasn't there for Chelsea and it wasn't there for Arsenal, it's not going to be there now, or at least I don't think it will be. They have to go for it. I'll be disappointed if he's sitting back. They absolutely have to go for it. I don't see any other way.
Yeah, no, I think I'm actually been slightly convinced by that reasoning by Jack, just because, the fact that they've had so much rest, you feel like, and also with the pressure on them playing at home, they would do themselves a lot of favors with the fan base if they were actually to go after them. But Dave knows this. Sometimes I am a bit of a sucker for setting up a bit more pragmatically, as long as, you are dangerous on the counter, because when you're not, man, is it ugly to watch, that's the case. So it is one of those risks. Let's just take this on to maybe an individual question about an individual player. Go to you on this one, Colin. Do you still have faith in Vicario as Spurs' long-term number one, or is it time that the club seriously look at bringing in a new first-choice keeper? Because I feel like, maybe I'm biased here, but I feel like he's made more mistakes this season than he ever has in the 2 seasons before that under Postecoglou.
I'm definitely behind him. I think a lot of his mistakes get. Well, they're obviously horrible bloopers, but I don't think our team is performing that well in front of him. I don't think I keep talking about the product. I don't think the product that's in front of him is probably as effective at ball retention or moving the ball up the pitch as it could be and protecting the keeper. Now, I wholeheartedly hold him responsible for the mistakes he's made. I don't think the opening goal against Nottingham Forest was his fault. I think he's been vilified because of the previous glaring error that he's made. But I mean, to me, that's Archie Gray's fault, taking a bad touch. If I was going to blame Vicario at all, it's probably playing the ball to his least dominant foot. But I definitely don't think we've seen that play 1,000 times. Play the ball to a midfielder that's running towards the keeper and then ping it out to the left or to the right in order to open space in the midfield and move the team up. So we've seen that. We see that 20 or 30 times a game. So I don't blame Vicario for that one. I also find it a bit hard to blame him for the one that went over his head, but I think he's overcompensating then at that stage, and he's in his own head. But I like his character. I do think he is as a reasonably solid keeper. Where we are right now, if you go out to the market and try and replace him, who are you going to replace him with? I know that's not an excuse not to replace him, but for me, his mentality, everybody talks about how Romero's mentality is great, but where's Romero in front of a camera? It might be a language thing when we've lost. And Vicario turns up and talks when they've lost and he's been responsible. So I admire that. I think that's this will sound incredibly sexist, but it's a very manly thing to do, a very grown-up thing to do, to face into your problems, to stand up and take ownership and drive on. Yeah, ultimately he mightn't be good enough, but I tell you what, 10 out of 10 for respecting us enough to come out and say, yeah, not good enough, and I'll sit here and I'll take the pelters, no problem. I did feel, although I'm not a regular in any way to go into the ground as one human being to another, I do think it wasn't correct to boo him individually, and I won't ever condone that. I think that was a big mistake. I understand the frustration. I think booing at halftime and booing substitutions is certainly game when you're paying big money to attend the matches, by all means. But booing an individual player, I think, is just a bit harsh. But he still came out and he spoke afterwards, so I admire and respect that. And I think I'd be behind him. I know he makes mistakes, but kind of like, what keeper doesn't? And in particular, what keeper doesn't when the team isn't really functioning that well in front of him?
Yeah. I actually hear what you're saying. I actually do like Vicario in terms of his character, in terms of he will come out and front things when things are going wrong. And you're absolutely spot on. It is a manly thing to do. And God, it feels so good to be able to say that now, because 2 years ago it would have been cancelled left, right, and centre. So I'm glad that we're back to normality here. But look, when it comes to Vicario, when you actually take him on his whole time here, there's too many mistakes in his game, in my opinion, for us to continue with him as number one beyond this season. I think we are entering around, maybe Arsenal entered with Aaron Ramsdale, where people were maybe surprised that they went after a new number one. But look at the benefits it's had. Ray is so much assured in absolutely everything he does. And I think we're approaching that with Vicario. Like with Vicario, for a long time, huge problem under set pieces being delivered into that box. Free kicks, corner kicks, massive weakness in his game. So much so now we have to sit everybody inside the 6-yard box to protect them, Then you also look at it in terms of his distribution. That's something he was all right with at the start. But whatever happened since his sort of ankle injury, it just hasn't been the same since. And he's very shaky on the ball, despite how shit we were Sunday. They didn't look like scoring against us. We gifted them that goal, and I actually do blame Vicario for that. For me, he's the guy in possession. He's got other options that aren't marked like Archie Gray was, or he could have pumped it long. He's the player in possession. I think he made a bad decision putting that Archie Gray under that sort of pressure. And I know Archie Gray came looking for it.
But that's what they're supposed to do. That midfielder is supposed to come out with a player on his shoulder in order to make space behind.
Correct.
Exactly, and by doing that, he opens it up then for Vicario to put it into one of the forward players and stuff like that. And I just think Vicario made a piss poor decision. Then you also look at it, the amount of goals we're conceding from the edge of the box this season. Now, I don't blame Vicario entirely. This is something that happened under Thomas Frank at Brentford. If people want to go and do the research, he was happy to give up shots around the edge of the box. Flecken made the most saves of any goalkeeper outside the box last season before he was ended up moving on. And when you look at how Thomas Frank sees it going the other way, that it's low-risk scoring opportunity, there's the explanation in why he gives up the shots around the edge of the box. And I think it's flawed, to be brutally honest with you, because I think he needs to realise Champions League and Premier League, you're up against quality every single week. And that quality will punish you from the edge of the box. And we've seen that time and repeatedly again this season. But I don't think he makes enough saves either. Sometimes with Vicario, I think, when I look at him now, I think he's small in the goals. The frame is small, and I think you hit the corners, he's banging trouble, and the ball will go in 9 times out of 10. I'll be honest, I was a huge Vicario fan. I'm a huge fan of his personality and the way he will come out in front things. And his mother's also a massive hit with away fans and stuff. She goes to nearly every single game, well endeared. But I've also been around long enough to know that when a keeper starts making high-profile errors, they never, ever get back to the keeper that was there beforehand. And there's been countless of examples of that down the years. And for me, I just think come the summer, we do need to bring in someone else and let them compete for that number one.
AK Sheck saying that's moving into Onana territory, Jack. Would you go that far? Would you consider Vicario's future at the end of the summer?
Oh, sorry, no, it's definitely not Onana territory. I think
that's good. Thank God.
Getting close.
No, Onana couldn't save anything. Any shot that came at him, he wouldn't save. Vicario made a very good save, in fairness, in the first half at 0-0. I think it was about 5 or 6 minutes in. Vicario still has his moments where he looks like a good goalkeeper. Onana was just a total disaster at Man United. I think that's a very harsh one, and probably if Onana was still in the league, that wouldn't be something to be levelled at him. But I think to go back to Colin and Dave's points, I think his mentality, I really want to like him, but at the same time, you can't have a keeper that makes that many mistakes. And I really like the fact that he buys into the club, his parents buy into the club.
Yeah.
As Dave said, his parents go to every match home and away. You see them in the concourse drinking beers with the regular fans. Like, they really do buy into it. A few of the lads I know went for dinner with his parents in Monaco. Like, they went out of their way to have dinner with the away fans. Probably people that have criticised him from time to time in the stands, but I really like the fact that people buy into the club. And in this day and age of football, that's something that's very rare. But at the same time, he just makes far too many mistakes. And I think it wouldn't be one I'd look to address in January, because I think it's one you have to get right. I'd look to get a left back and a midfielder in January, and if you can get Semenyo. I don't think that's overly realistic. I think he'll go somewhere else. But I think in the summer it has to be something we look at, but maybe say, unless we're certain it's an upgrade.
Yeah.
You can't just buy someone for the sake of it and bin off Vicario, is kind of what I'm saying. And I think someone like, if you get Kinski out on loan and get a second choice keeper and maybe someone homegrown that maybe is a bit of a better shot stopper, and see if Kinski can maybe improve over the next couple of years, you get someone that's 31, 32, plug that gap for 3 or 4 years, and hopefully then Kinski comes in and is the man. But you can't just lay around and wait for something to fix itself. And I think even on the set pieces, in fairness, I thought he dealt with the set pieces really well at the weekend. I thought there was a few of them where the ball went into him on the line where he previously would have panicked, and he got a really good punch on it. So it is something, I think he seems like a really hard working fella. He'll work on the weaknesses in his game, but I think some of the stuff he does, he just evokes panic in everyone else in the team, and I think that's a bit of an issue. I think Ange simplified his role with his passing. Dave, did you say about you thought his passing had gotten worse? Ange just wants him to move the ball quickly. Frank wants him to invite pressure and then clip a ball into the channel like that. Like playing a 10-yard pass to Romero quickly, take a touch, get it out of your feet, pass it. That's much easier than clipping a 60-yard pass to Kudus down the line that he's hopefully going to control. I think he's asking too much from him on the ball.
The thing is with Vicarios, though, on that, Jack, as well, at times when we go along. The only player to aim for is Richarlison. It's never anywhere near the guy. You know what I mean? But sometimes when we go along, it's like 20 yards to the left, and it's like, fuck me, man. Like, if we're going to play this shit long ball, can we at least get it to the player we're aiming for?
But there's no point in sending Richarlison. He can't control it. It bounces off.
But I think that's down to the manager, not down to Vicario, because much like a lot of our players in the squad, they have limitations, and Vicario's never going to hit passes like Ederson, or even like Kinski's an excellent ball player. Like, he's never going to hit those passes, so don't ask him to do it. Don't try and train that into him. He's so far from the level. It'd be like trying to train a League 2 player to play Premier League football. It's not going to happen. So just either play to his strengths or don't play him. I think that's a manager's job, is to maximise the players he has. And I think he's not doing that with Vicario. He's not doing that with a lot of players. And I think while Vicario has his faults, I don't think it's necessarily his fault that he's not able to play a 60-yard pass onto Richarlison or Kubic's toe.
No, I'm not on about even putting it to their toe, but just put it in the general direction.
Oh, I know, yeah. But
yeah.
It keeps happening. Stop asking him to do it. Getting past the centre backs before doing it. Just say, listen, only go long if you're under pressure. A lot of time it just goes long for the sake of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that I don't really think it's his fault, because that's just who he is.
And the thing is, it's not all bad with Vicario. I'd argue, I think he's one of the best one-on-one shot stoppers in the world. I think, he's the best at pulling out a save where you're thinking, oh, fuck, that's in the back of the net. But the problem is, and what I have is like, when we're constantly under bombardment, I don't want anyone else in goals. But when he's not being under that constant bombardment, he's almost going to make cost you a goal by a mistake. And that's where I have my problem with him.
It's like you said it, or Jack said it, I believe, where actually the opening 10, 15 minutes of that game against Forest, it was actually pretty cagey between both teams. It wasn't like really either side was really threatening. And then we gave up that goal from Vicario's mistake, and then felt like the floodgates kind of opened after that. We gave them that confidence, by making a mistake like that. Who's to say maybe the game, I'm being really optimistic here, but maybe the game could have gone differently if he didn't make a mistake
Archie
like
Gray's
that.
mistake.
I back Colin on that. I think that's Archie Gray's mistake. I think Colin was spot on. It was to his left foot, but I think that's a miniature mistake. That if there's no goal from that, you don't even think about that. That's something that maybe it's such a small mistake. I'd say it's 10% Vicario's fault, 90% Archie Gray's fault. The point of that there is, as I said, see that 10 times a match. Keeper passes it to Gray, passes it to Romero, who's free. The player that's pressing Gray moves on to Romero. Gray's free, pass it back to Gray, and Gray has space in front of him to run into. I don't think that's not majorly complicated. Gray just has to play that pass first time, and there's no danger, I think.
I get what you're saying, but Vicario has the whole vision of the pitch. He has Jed Spence sitting out there unmarked, Van de Ven sitting there ready to receive it unmarked. He's the one in possession. He can see everything. He can see that guy's trailing Archie Gray. And I agree with you. Archie Gray will learn from that in terms of maybe he could have looked to move that first time. The pass was bubbled into him. We're playing on a carpet, and the pass is bubbled into him.
I agree with that.
Therefore, puts Archie Gray under that sort of pressure. It's difficult to get under control of stuff, and that's where I think the responsibility mainly relies on Vicario. If it was a decent pass along the carpet straight to his foot, I'd go after Archie Gray all day long. But the fact that it's a 5-yard, 7-yard pass and it's bubbled into him, I'm blaming Vicario all day long.
We'll move I think that's 10% to 15 then.
Was an issue.
Sorry, Jack.
No, go on, Colin. Yeah, sorry.
I was only making an erroneous joke. I was going to move it from 10% responsibility to 15 on the back of what Dave said.
You're in 5% off of Dave's argument there. Fair play. I also agree with what Jack was saying, where sometimes it's good to play to a player's strengths, of course. Like, you need to do that as a manager, absolutely. But then also you have to, at the same time, be very cognizant of what they're poor at, what they are weak at. And it doesn't seem like he seems to be doing that with certain players. And Vicario might be a good example of it. Let's go to the last question of the evening, and then we'll wrap things up. For the FA Cup tie against Aston Villa, Dave, the club has taken steps to improve the matchday atmosphere by scrapping category pricing and reducing adult tickets to £30 and trialing another dedicated singing section in the South Stand. Do you see this as a genuine and positive step in the right direction for match-going fans and just the overall atmosphere at Spurs?
I think it's a positive step in the fact that they're starting to liaise with these fan groups, because the atmosphere, whether who's to blame, it's a massive problem, right? Managers are giving out about it, players giving out about it, fans are even giving out about it. And all it does is make it easier for the away team coming here. It just gives them more and more confidence and stuff like that. So it is something that has to be sort of sorted out, and it has to be a conservative effort between club and fans in that regard, in terms of trying to sort it out. And look, it's been big trouble since we moved into that stadium in 2019. Everyone that was at White Hart Lane in certain sections were all split up and stuff like that. And they built the big Dortmund stand, the big South stand there for it to sort of replicate the noise from Dortmund. Yet, someone like me can just get a ticket and walk in there so easily and stuff like that. That's usually where you would sort of want a lot of your hardcore supporters or the fans that will sing and stuff like that. So I think it's just been a constant mismatch, which is a shame considering the effort we put in with all the acoustics, around the top to be able to reverberate the sound in and keep it down and stuff. The whole idea of it is basically we're loud, we're raucous, and it sort of intimidates the opposition and almost drowns out their fans as well to a large degree. And it just hasn't been working. Now, look, the chopping and changing of stars of football, some of the shit performances seen also doesn't help. But, I think to try and get the atmosphere going for the start of games, at least, I think it's a really good move to get a singing section together, because sometimes I don't get it. Like with some of these European teams that come, right? They're 3-0 down at the Hotspur Stadium. The tops are off the fucking flags and the scarves are going around their head. And I'm like, but you're 3-0 down. You know what I mean? And it's sort of
I
like,
don't care.
I don't get it. But would I like a section of the Spurs fans to be like that? Yes, I would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think they will fix it. Sorry, Jack. I'm at it all night now, cutting across everyone. I'm sorry. I think that I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. Vinay
Benkentesham.
Thank you. I wasn't going to murder his name online. But I think he'll fix that. I think he will fix that. But it's going to take a couple of years. I think he will fix that, because I was hypercritical sitting on my own couch watching what Levy was doing. And all he was thinking about was the almighty dollar. How could he maximize the return? Obviously, that's his job as well. But he just that whole push towards turning fans into clients and just kind of commoditizing the entire experience backfired, and always was going to backfire. And I don't think anybody could tell him any different, because he was just too powerful. I think Vinay will sort out a lot, or at least I have faith that he will sort it out over. But it's going to take years. Moving people around the stadium, getting singing groups going. It'll take years.
It's something we've done at Arsenal as well, actually, in terms of working with the fans. And you've got them Bellan boys that all dress up like Arteta, you know what I mean? And stuff like that going to the game. They're regular group together and stuff like that. But, look, when have you ever seen the club give out a freebie? And I know it's just a scarf, but when have you ever seen the club do that Bardi Europa League semi-final last year out in Bodo? Before that, I've just never heard of it. So, to Colin's point there, I think Vinay is trying to do little things to sort of show the appreciation, and then that appreciation sort of hopefully generates into atmosphere and stuff.
And to Colin's point as well, I think Vinay, in the very short time he's been here, I'd argue he's probably already spoken more publicly to Spurs fans than Daniel Levy ever has, really, at the time at the club. And he does come across as kind of like a very trained politician, Vinay, in that he has very well designed and orchestrated answers. But I think that's what you can take at the end of the day compared to what we had in the past. Which was
but he's top tier management. Of course, he's going to answer like that. But I do believe he understands the. Oh no, I'm going to say it again. The product. I do think he understands that better than Levy did, or Levy was just too driven by margin and return. So I think he will. I have faith. I had it in Frank too. I have faith in Vinay that he'll make that whole engagement process better, and inevitably goodwill will turn into better environments and better atmospheres.
You did make me shiver, Colin, when you brought up the client part of Daniel Levy, because that is one of his legacies, is the fact that it's the CRN number,
legacy fans. I mean, it was disgusting. It was disgusting. Like, I mean,
reference number.
Yeah, I don't use that word lightly. That was disgusting. People pour their heart and soul into the club, and to have it commoditized like a packet of bacon was just, was outrageous and disgusting. And I mean, there should have been a revolt when that happened, and calling people legacy fans and moving people all around when we were moving into the new stadium. And I don't even go, and I could feel the pain of that. And that was outrageous. We're the heart and soul of this club. We can't. It's not like we're fans of Tesco and Tesco irritate us and we go and shop in Morrison's.
Not like you're doing a return.
Yeah,
that's why I get annoyed though when people inside the club get annoyed when Spurs fans booze. It's not like we can just go, okay, we're unhappy with Tesco products, let's go Duns or Super Value. You know what I mean? You're stuck with Tottenham Hotspur, so of course they're going to hear the frustration, and they need to start realizing that inside.
But it's a relationship. It's not a transaction. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's not a transaction. We're not buying something. It's a relationship.
Spurs have been in my family just as long as my family. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, just the idea that they
And they're
didn't
just
even,
as disappointing. Hey!
yeah, it might be trivial thing to go off about, but it is insane that they never even called it fan reference number. Why did they have
Yeah.
to call it client
Oh, it's
reference number? It was
disgusting.
so tone deaf.
Disgusting.
So
I never
tone deaf.
thought of that.
FRN doesn't sound as good as CRN, Jack.
It's just like, you know, if you were talking to like the Spurs, you know, whatever help desk or something, you would sound like you were returning a T-shirt or something, you know, at
Yeah,
like
yeah,
at a
exactly
store.
it.
Like you're like, oh, what's your CRN number? Do you have the receipt? Like it's just insane. It's like you're talking about your own bloody football club. It feels like it's just madness. Drop kick your teacher. Maybe finishing things off for us here. Away fans should have used the scarves to shield their eyes. Will you be doing that, Jack? I think you said you don't want to forget your scarf.
Yeah, hopefully I'm not having to do it. Hopefully I'm looking at it going and pleasantly surprised here, but I'll bring the scarf just to be safe. Hopefully it doesn't come out of my pocket though.
He'll hopefully be waving it around, not waving it in front of his eyes and tying it behind his head.
Have
Yeah.
a blindfold on every seat.
Yeah.
Guess whether you're turning up to a football game or a burlesque party.
As a match going,
more fun.
as a match going fan, Jack, just maybe lastly, do you have anything to add to that Vinay Venkatesham thing? Just the fact that they are lowering the ticket prices for this Villa game and have made these sort of condolences or these offers?
I think there's probably 2 points to look at for the ticket prices, which is one they've not gotten sellouts in those Champions League games. So I think you could have.
Sorry, Jack,
I'm so sorry.
I thought you were laughing at me. I just
No, sorry,
It's
Jack.
like, what did I say?
It's the comment that came up from
in all my weeks of coming on to this, that is the best comment I've seen yet.
That's fantastic.
Oh, that's really good.
Take a
Okay,
bow,
I'll recompose myself.
She has
now.
to subscribe to the marriage.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Brilliant. I'm so sorry, Jack, for laughing at that.
No, you're fine. I'm happy you drew my attention to that. So
That's
you wasn't a big
fantastic.
fan of Levy. But yeah, on the ticket prices, I think they had no choice but to do it because of the Champions League games not selling out and those Premier League games against City and Newcastle and the Dortmund game as well have all gone on guest sales. So I think that's supply and demand. That's the same as if you go to Tesco and people aren't buying a thing of milk for £4, so you have to put it down to £3.50. I think that's the same as that. But I think on the other end of it, if you're being a bit more positive, you'd say, okay, that shows that they're listening to us and the fan group engagement is actually working. So I think there's probably two factors to it. And then on the relocation of fans, I think it's to the bottom of the south stand. I really like the idea of that. I think you look at the noise generated from a 3,000 fan away end, and I think Villa are bringing 7,000 fans or 6,000 fans or something to the game, so they're going to be well up for it. I think it's a 5:30 kickoff on a Saturday. People are going to be well oiled, well up for it, and I think we'll need to bring a good atmosphere, and that's going to be a big game. Like, we don't want to be out of both cups in January. You want to have a big game feel to that, and at the end of the day, if the atmosphere is good, it adds that extra 1% that maybe can get a team over the line. Maybe that equates to 2 or 4 points per season. That can be the difference between, well, probably coming 12th and 13th for us at the moment, but hopefully the difference between coming 1st and 2nd or 5th or 6th or whatever, that those things do matter. And at the end of the day, those marginal gains, they add up. And as a supporter who wastes far too much of their money on going to games, apart from the performance and result, the thing that I would say determines how I feel coming out of that ground is how good the atmosphere is. Like, I've come out of games before where we've won 3-1 and I've nearly felt flat because it was a 3 o'clock kickoff against Crystal Palace and there was no atmosphere whatsoever until we went ahead, and then it died down 2 weeks later, 2 minutes later. But games against the Man United game, Ange's first home game, that was unbelievable. That was the best atmosphere I've been in. Bodo Glimt at home in the semi-final of the Europa League. Like, those games are so memorable, not just because of the game, but because of the atmosphere that you were involved in. And it really, that experience of actually being in the stadium versus watching at home on TV is just, it's something, money can buy it, but it can't buy it at the same time because you're not guaranteed to get it going into a game. And I think it is something that most people will say their best days are those days where the place was rocking. People still talk about the Taxi for Mike on back in 2010 or 2011, where the whole of the lane was upstanding, singing, scarves in the air. Like the images of that and the noise of it is just something that it stays with people their entire lives. And I think that's something that is really important. And listen, if that's something that takes 3 or 4 seasons to get working, I'm far more willing to give that patience than anything on the pitch, because that's something that will stand the test of time. Managers and players, they move on typically every couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years. If the atmosphere can get fixed, that's something that could stand the test of time, be 10, 20 years down the line and going, okay, we might not have had the perfect time under Vinay Venkatesan, but he really changed the atmosphere and made us feel like the club cared about us again. And I think if he leaves nothing else, that'd be an unbelievable legacy for him to leave, is getting people to maybe fall back in love with their football club again.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thanks for being on the show, guys. Another class one. I really do look forward to our conversations every week. I think you guys have been wonderful additions to the show. Any final words from yourself here, Colin? And I put in both of your guys' Twitters. Any final words, Colin?
I saw that. Thank you for that. Please, God, give us a performance against Liverpool, because I've got so many, probably like Dave and Jack, Liverpool friends, we'll just call them friends, that are Liverpool fans, and it's unbearable when they beat us. It is utterly unbearable. It's almost as bad as when Arsenal beat us. Almost.
Yeah.
So I just want a performance that at least I can turn around and go, well, we played well. At the moment, we can't say anything because we're losing and we're playing terrible. Well, our last game we played terrible. So please, just for Christmas, give me a decent performance against Liverpool. Please, Santa. Yeah. That's why I wore the hat.
Couldn't agree more. They're like rats. They're just waiting there to pounce and ruin your Christmas. Yeah. Can't bear it.
I won't go that far, but they're close to something.
No, he's keeping it PC. Could have gone worse, it sounds like, Dave.
Yeah.
Jack, any final words from yourself and anything?
Much like Colin, I think that obviously going to the game, I'd like to have a performance. I'd like to come out with the ground and go, geez, I was really pleasantly surprised by that. What a brilliant performance that was. But on top of that, my girlfriend's family are all Liverpool fans, so I'll be seeing a lot of them over the Christmas. I'm sure they'll probably all be hanging around her house, keeping an eye out for me, so they come out and give me a good slagging. So hopefully I can have some bragging rights, because I remember going in watching the game against them and one of Ange's first games where we won 2-1 with the injustice of that VAR thing. I watched it with my girlfriend's uncle, and he was complaining about that decision for about 6 months, and it was music to my ears hearing him complain about it. Nothing is better than a win through some sort of injustice. So I think something along those lines would make me feel pretty good going into Christmas.
The best part about that too is we ruined the whole Premier League. You know, I remember it was like the Premier League was in full riot because you know, how dare a decision go against Liverpool?
And if we do lose, just do what I do: turn your phone off and go hiking for a few days and take the fun out of their celebrations. I always find that a bit of fun. But look, I want to say a massive thank you to you two boys. I think to what Jack said, I think, I really enjoy this every week. I really look forward to it. Sorry about last week, a few things sort of came up last minute that I had to go and take care of and stuff. But 1,500 watching across all platforms and that today, which is absolutely insane. So, we don't usually ask, we should probably ask more, but smash the like, run the likes up and stuff like that. I want to say a massive thank you to all you guys tuning in this evening, because I know it's sort of hard times at Tottenham at the minute, and no one wants to constantly be told how crap we are. So I appreciate everybody tuning in, and to the people that have gone the extra mile as well. We've got Sugar Ray, really appreciate it. Jerome as well, along with Artist T, really appreciate you guys. And a massive happy Christmas to Jack and Colin. I'm not sure we'll see you before Christmas, so happy Christmas to you guys and the family, and hopefully you enjoy yourselves. And best of luck to the father-in-law, Colin. Hopefully he makes a full recovery.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great product we have here.
Yeah.
we're all clients.
Yeah. Luckily they're not our clients. Friends of the channel, and really good guys. So, but look forward to these. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow with some more stuff ahead of the weekend, and then hopefully we have something to go into Christmas with, maybe a bit positive about when it comes to Tottenham Hotspur. We'll see you all next time, everybody. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.